Be doing a DIY. What is up, everybody? If you are new here, welcome. My name is Jessica from Etta Jane's Vintage, and here on this channel we like to focus on thrifting, vintage, sustainable fashion, and a little bit of random content in between. If that is something that you're interested in, you've definitely come to the right place. And before we even jump into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Now in today's video, we're actually going to be doing a DIY. So if you watched my last video where I did a thrift haul, I hauled a ton of blankets, like crochet blankets, as well as some knit blankets. And I talked about making some blanket pants. So that is what we're going to be doing in today's video. I did watch a few tutorials to figure out what was the best way to go about it, but eventually I just kind of went my own direction and did what I knew would work based off of like the things that I've learned before with sewing. So what I decided to do was take a pair of jeans that I already had. They're actually a pair of like Topshop jeans that I got a few years ago, and I really like the fit on those jeans, so I used that to help with the pattern. This is my first time doing this, so there is going to be a little bit of maybe trial and error. Also at the end, I'm going to show you all two options of the finished product, and I want you to let me know down below in the comments which direction you think I should go. So before we jump into the DIY tutorial, let me go ahead and review the materials with you. The first thing that you're going to need is a pair of jeans, of course, or some type of pants that you really love the fit on, so you can use this as your pattern. You're going to, of course, need your blanket. You also will need a ruler. You're going to need like a marker or a piece of chalk or something where you can trace your pattern onto your blanket. You also will need some scissors. And then lastly, you will need a sewing machine. If you don't have a sewing machine, you can probably hand sew this. I think it would just take a while. So I would recommend using a sewing machine, but if you don't mind hand stitching, you can definitely go that route as well. The first step in this process is to cut your pattern. So you're going to lay out your blanket. I'm actually folding mine in half, so that way I have my fabric doubled. That way I only have to cut 2 times instead of cutting 4 times with my pattern. You're going to take your jeans or pants, whatever you decided on, lay them out on your blanket and adjust them at the edge. That way the fringe is on the outside of the pants when you are ready to sew them together. You're then going to go ahead and trace your pattern. I'm just using a ruler here to make sure that I have enough seam allowance on the side. I think I measured about 1 inch around the jeans, just so I can make sure I have some extra fabric in case I need to take them in, or if I make a mistake, I'll have a little bit more room to adjust. So I'm just tracing down with a piece of chalk that I have. You can also use your marker, or if you have a piece of soap, you can use that as well. And once your pattern is fully traced, that is when you're actually going to start cutting it out. I would recommend using fabric scissors. These are a really good pair of fabric scissors that I do own. So it was able to cut through both layers of the blanket. If your scissors are not that great, you probably just want to do 1 layer at a time. That way you don't tear up your scissors or mess up your blanket. Now that I have my back side cut, I'm going to go ahead and remove that part of the pattern. And then I'm going to flip my jeans on the other side, so that way I can outline the front pattern of the pants. And I'm going to go ahead and lay that on the remaining part of my fabric, making sure that I'm close to the edge, pulling out any pieces that are tucked in so I get a proper pattern. And I'm just trying to make sure that I line it up so that if I do need to use any additional fabric, I still have a good amount left. And you're going to do the same thing that you did with the back side of your pattern. Go ahead, take your ruler to mark your seam allowance, and then take your chalk or soap or marker and go ahead and outline the jeans so that you have your pattern for the front side. Now you're going to go ahead and take your scissors and just cut on either side of your pattern. Here I'm just cutting off the excess here that was on the left side of the jeans. Then I am going to eventually go on the right side and cut the inside part of the pattern so that I have my front pieces cut as well. So the next part of the process is going to be to match your pattern pieces together. I typically like to sew both of my front panels together and then both of my back panels together before I put the whole thing together. So here I'm just laying out my pattern pieces. On the left is the front panel, and I'm going ahead and matching those two together. And what you're going to do is when you go to your sewing machine, you're going to sew along the crotch seam, which I'm outlining here. And then here's a bit of a close-up so you can see the part that you're going to be sewing together. So you're going to do that with the back side as well as the front. Here I'm matching the back two panel pieces together. And similarly, I'm going to sew against the crotch seam as well. Now this part is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm just using a straight stitch here and stitching down the crotch seam, and I'm going to be stitching the crotch seam on both the back panel pieces as well as the front panel pieces. Right here in this clip, I'm actually sewing the back panel pieces, which have the fringe, and then once I finish that, I'll go in and sew the front panel pieces down the crotch seam. And here you can see what the seam looks like when they're sewed together. So once you have your crotch seam sewn, you're going to go ahead and lay out the two panels that you just sewed, the front and the back. And here you can see I'm laying them with the right sides together with the wrong sides facing out. And the reason why you're going to do that is because the next thing that you will have to do is sew that inside of the pants. It's kind of like the inseam area as well as a little bit of the crotch. So what I'm doing is just matching up both the front and back panel to make sure that everything is aligned. And that is where you're going to sew in the inside of the pants. I'm also just going to grab some straight pins to go ahead and pin that together, just so I can make sure that when I go to my sewing machine, nothing moves out of place and everything stays exactly where it needs to be. So I did lose the footage of me sewing the front and back panels together, but you can see here in the clip, this is how it should look after you sew the inside part together. Next, what I'm doing is just flipping them on the right side, and I'm going to go ahead and lay that out just so I can get a better sense of what the pants look like, and you can see they're really starting to form at this point. Now, after I have my pants laid out, I'm going to figure out how I actually want to sew the sides together so that I can make sure that the fringe is still showing. The first thing I thought was maybe to just fold in the edge of the top piece and then stitch that down. Then I decided that it may look a little bit sloppy, so I turned the pants inside out on the wrong side, making sure that the right sides face each other, and decided that it may make more sense to actually fold the fringe inward, lay the top flap over, and then stitch. In order to make sure that I had my fringe laid properly and that everything was neat and clean, I did go ahead to my ironing board and just iron that fringe down in the inside of the pant. So that way when I laid the top flap over, everything was matching and neat, and I wouldn't have to worry about anything being out of place. Once you have your fringe in position, go ahead back to your sewing machine and you're just going to do a top stitch along that edge, making sure not to catch any of the fringe in the inside. You may be able to see as I'm sewing, I'm using a little tool that is called a dowel, and that tool is helpful to move your fabric through the machine, especially if you're using something that is very thick and needs a little bit of help moving through the machine. It's also nice to use the dowel because you don't have to worry about getting your finger stuck under the needle. You can just use the dowel to help push that material through. So I'm almost finished sewing one side of the pant leg, and once I finish sewing this side, I'll move on to the other side of the pant leg and sew that up as well. Once you've completed the sewing of your back and front panel pieces, you want to try everything on. I'm debating on if I want to do a elastic waistband, which would be this option here, and just fold down the fringe. My second option would be adding a belt and doing more of a paper bag waist, which would be really cool and unique, and I like that look. But essentially, you have your finished pants, and this is what they look like. All right, so those were the two options. Let me know again down below in the comments which way I should go. Do you think I should keep it as the paper bag waist, or do you think I should add an elastic band around the waist to just make a simple waistband? Depending on what you all decide, I'll go ahead and make the edits to the pants, and then I'll probably post on my Instagram which option I decide to go with. Let me know how you like this DIY, and if you want to see some more DIY videos. I will see you all in the next one. Until next time, bye.